There is a man you have met before. He doesn't react when you expect him to. He doesn't explain his silence. He doesn't justify his distance. He doesn't flinch when you test him. And something about that disturbs you, not because he is cruel, not because he is cold, but because you cannot control him. You cannot reach him with your approval. You cannot wound him with your withdrawal. He has become something most people spend their entire lives pretending to be genuinely free. And that kind of freedom, in a world built on emotional leverage, is the most unsettling thing a person can become. This is not a video about becoming detached. It is not a guide to becoming numb. It is about something far more precise, the psychology of the man who has removed the one weapon the world uses against everyone else. The need to be needed. Here is what no one tells you about the need for approval. It is not a personality flaw. It is not weakness. It is a survival mechanism that has outlived its purpose. When you were young, approval meant safety. Disapproval meant danger. Your nervous system learned this. And it will keep running that old program until you manually override it. Most people never do. They spend 40 years performing the right emotions, saying the right things, shrinking into the right shapes, and calling it living. Marcus Aurelius wrote this in private. Not for the world, for himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He was emperor. He had the approval of an entire civilization, and still, he had to remind himself daily it means nothing. Because he understood something that takes most people a lifetime to feel. Approval is not oxygen. It feels like oxygen. It triggers the same panic when removed. But it is not oxygen. The moment you stop treating it as survival, you stop being controllable. Think about the people in your life who frustrate you the most. Not the ones who disrespect you openly. The ones who simply do not need your validation. There is something about them that creates a specific, low-grade anxiety in you. Because the psychological contract most human relationships run on I give you validation. You give me compliance doesn't work on them. And a person you cannot leverage is a person you cannot predict. A person you cannot predict, you fear. This is not about becoming cold. It is about understanding that every time you perform for an audience, you are handing someone a remote control to your interior world. The Stoics called this prohairesis, the one faculty no one can take from you. Your faculty of choice, your response, your judgment. Everything outside that, not yours, not their opinion, not their silence, not what they think happened. When you internalize that distinction not intellectually, but in your bones, you stop reacting. And a man who does not react on command becomes very, very difficult to manage. There is a game being played in every conversation you have ever had. Most people are not aware they are playing it. It goes like this. The one who speaks most reveals most. The one who reveals most is most exposed. The one most exposed is most controllable. Silence, in our culture, is treated as a problem to be solved. A gap in conversation feels like failure. An unanswered question feels like aggression. A person who does not explain themselves feels suspicious. This is by design. We have been socially conditioned to fill silence because silence gives you nothing to work with. And most social dynamics run entirely on information extraction. The Stoics understood this not as social strategy, but as philosophical discipline. Epictetus said, "Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt." But he meant something deeper than wit. He meant Your words are not free. Every word is a commitment. Every explanation is a concession. Every justification is a confession that you believe you owe someone an account of yourself. You don't. Watch what happens when you stop explaining your decisions. When you stop defending your choices to people who didn't ask in good faith. When you let a question simply hang in the air. The discomfort is not yours. It is theirs. And what they do with that discomfort tells you everything about why they asked. This is not manipulation. This is clarity. The man who needs nothing also says only what is necessary. Not because he is calculating. Because he has learned that most speech is just anxiety wearing the mask of communication. He has quieted the anxiety. What remains is signal. Pure, unhurried, unafraid. And in a world of noise, silence is the loudest thing in the room. Here is the real secret. Not the silence. Not the emotional independence. Those are the outputs. The input, the source of all of it, is this. A man who has built a life inside himself that is worth inhabiting. Most people run from themselves. Not because they are lazy. Not because they are broken. But because the interior, when left unfurnished, is unbearable. So they fill it. With noise. With opinions. With the validation of strangers. With the manufactured urgency of a screen that never goes dark. And they call this being connected. But you cannot be connected to others until you are connected to yourself. This is where the Stoics were brutal in the most loving way possible. Marcus Aurelius again, writing in private, never intending to be read, confine yourself to the present. Not a platitude. A surgical instruction, because the man who is unanchored in the present is always somewhere else, always in the wound, always in the fear, always performing for a version of himself that may never arrive. The interior life is not built through meditation retreats or weekend workshops. It is built through daily, unglamorous acts of choosing your own judgment over the comfort of borrowed opinions. Reading something difficult, sitting with discomfort without narrating it, making a decision no one will applaud, carrying grief without turning it into a performance, waking up and choosing, again, to become the person only you can see. This is what the man who needs nothing has actually done. He has made himself good company, to himself, and once that is real, once it is not a pose, not a performance, not a self-help goal, on a vision board, something fundamental shifts. Other people feel it immediately, not because he has become impressive, because he has become complete. And a complete person does not radiate need. He radiates presence. And presence, quiet, solid, unannounced, presence is the rarest thing on earth. Nobody tells you when it happens. There's no morning you wake up and feel it click into place. It's quieter than that. One day you just notice you stopped waiting. Stopped waiting for someone to confirm that your decision was right. Stopped waiting for the room to go quiet before you felt like you belonged in it. Stopped waiting for proof that you were allowed to take up space. You stopped waiting. And you can't even point to the day it changed. That's how you know it was real. The world runs on one thing, not money, not power, need. The need to be seen, the need to be chosen, the need to be told even once that you are enough. And as long as you carry that need openly, visibly, the world knows exactly which lever to pull. Remove the need not by pretending it isn't there, but by filling it yourself, slowly, privately, over a long time, and the lever stops working. That's all this is. You won't become cold. You won't become distant. You'll become something harder to describe and harder to forget. The person in the room who doesn't seem to want anything from anyone. Not because they're empty, because they're full. There's someone you've crossed paths with who had this quality. Maybe you couldn't name it then. Maybe you just felt it, a stillness around them that made your own noise feel embarrassing. You've thought about them since. That's the thing about people who have done this work. They don't chase. They don't perform. They don't argue for their own worth. They just exist with a completeness that makes the room rearrange itself slightly around where they're standing. This isn't a destination. I want to be honest with you about that. You don't arrive here and stay. You arrive, and the next day something tests it. Someone says the wrong thing, an old wound opens. You feel the pull to explain yourself, to justify, to need again, and you choose, not perfectly, not without cost, but you choose. That's the whole practice. Just that choice made again, in private, without applause. Build something inside yourself worth living in. Not for anyone watching, for the long nights when no one is.